Welcome to another edition of Very Vogue with me, Val Kleinhans. Super thrilled to have the wonderful Gigi Larsen in the building. Found her on Instagram. She's coming all the way from Seattle. She's not trapped in snow like I am currently while recording this episode. She's doing fine, so I'm glad that she gave me the excuse to stay in tonight while we're just chatting and BSing. Gigi, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy we're both warm and inside.
I know, yeah, that's definitely the way it needs to stay. How
Yeah.
did your Instagram journey begin? Because that's where I started and found you.
It started about 2 years ago during COVID, and I was just so bored and only
Mm,
working part-time. And I saw other people, putting themselves out there, and I thought there could always be more mid-size representation on Instagram. And I thought, I'm going to start posting some outfits. And so I had
facts.
my mom taking my pictures.
Cute. Does she
And
so
yeah,
does she always want to do that with you, or just because she thinks it's fun, or
she
does she
just
kind of
finds it
like to be
fun.
in on
She
it? Yeah.
Yeah, she likes to see what I put together, but
Well,
I've since gotten
it's
the spot.
yeah, gives her an excuse to see you too, which I'm sure she doesn't complain about.
Exactly. Some mother-daughter time is always good for the heart.
I know. I'm jealous of that because mine is 850 miles away. So I don't
That's
really
good.
get to, yeah, it sucks. My mom's all the way back in Pittsburgh and I'm in Minnesota. But I try
Trek.
and get home like at least once a year. So it's cool
Good.
that you have that.
Yeah, it's nice.
How did you develop your sense of style?
It has been a wild ride. I started out just being like just the trends, in high school it was like the
Right, right.
super puppy, and then it was like only wore black, and then it was, I've done it all. And I feel like I'm just kind of finally finding my own style, which is like a mix of bit of everything. But
Mhm.
Pinterest, celebrity style, and Instagram definitely influence me for sure.
Absolutely. Like the real, I call them the real people on Instagram that like post themselves and show what they're putting together. That sort of fascinates me more than the celebrities and what they put together because it's like somebody's literally hired to make them look good. Like how much of a creative process is really going on in there? But when you see just
Yeah,
a normal everyday person going and doing that, I'm like, wow, okay. Like
exactly.
they're doing something different, something refreshing. Is that one of your favorite parts of Instagram too?
It really is. I love seeing the creativity. I mean, there's some people that put together just wild outfits I would never think of, but
Yeah.
like my saved is just full of them. And I just take so much inspiration from that of like, okay, this doesn't have to go together to look cool, or
Facts.
it doesn't have to like come straight from the runway, like look like the trends. It can be a mix of old stuff and new stuff, thrifted stuff, and
Yeah.
a lot of that on Instagram for sure.
I know. Whoever said black and brown doesn't go together was seriously disturbed. I'm like,
I
excuse
love
me. I
it. Looks so
know.
rich.
It's
So
it's
rich.
just earthy. Yeah, earthy, neutral, somewhat grungy, which is right up my alley.
Oh
I
yes.
I love it so much. When it comes to celebrities, though, I am curious. Who do you follow? Who do you watch? Who
Mhm.
catches your eye when it comes to style?
I'm really into Gigi Hadid style. I think it's very interesting right now. A lot of like
Mm,
oversized menswear.
yes.
I also really enjoy, oh gosh, why does my mind blank as soon as you ask me that? I'm like, I know nothing.
It happens to the best of us. It really does.
Yes.
It
Dakota
it.
Johnson.
Oh yeah, she.
All
Oh
the Gucci.
yes,
Should love a good loafer.
yeah,
Definitely the menswear inspired celebrity outfits.
yeah. Dakota has this way of just making things look absolutely effortless. Like
Like
she's not. You will never catch her doing the most. You will catch her doing just enough, and it looks like classy and put together.
it looks so good and like somehow sexy, but still like put together and classy.
Mhm.
Her
Yeah,
style
I
is
don't know. I don't know who she's learning from, but I would love to take notes as
right.
well.
I
She's
need that
good.
master class.
Right? Where's hers? Forget Chris Jenner. I want her. Like
We need it.
we. Oh my! another reason that I hit follow with you was because you are another mid-sized baddie. I am a 14 right now, and you're right. There is not a whole lot of representation for us. I find it hard to find something that like fits me perfectly because, well, and I would imagine you do too, or any other mid-sized girl would. We're literally like stuck between two markets that
Yes.
the fashion industry like tries to sell to. Like we're not quite rail thin, but we're also not quite plus size either. What has your experience with mid-size shopping been like?
Exhausting. To
Yes.
well, it's just nothing hurts more than going into a store and realizing they stop at a large, which they consider as like a 10.
Yeah.
And then they recommend sizing up in their things. And you're like, okay, so I'm not welcome here. And then you go to the next store and the only things in your size are like frumpy middle-aged woman clothes. I don't
Yeah.
want that. I want
No.
to look chic and trendy, but not cheap. It's frustrating.
Absolutely. Super frustrating. You and shout out to Urban Outfitters because they need to take some
Yes.
notes here for real.
Yes.
I'm like, y'all, your large is not a large.
Yeah,
Oh, your
it's
large is
small.
more like an 8-10. It's not a 12 or a
Exactly.
14. Like, no. Mm-mm.
It hurts.
What
You walk in and you're like, all right, and we're up.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I used to love Urban, and they're just
Mhm.
one example. I can think of countless others, but they're just
Yeah.
one that's on the top of my mind right now. They're the ones that I cannot buy bottoms from, and I struggle with this too
Yes.
because I don't know what it's like. They made those for models,
Yeah.
not anybody with a little bit of curve, a little bit of a behind, a little bit of a hip. Like they just don't. So I stopped buying bottoms from Urban Outfitters. Sometimes I can do tops, but
Yeah.
sometimes I can't. And if you're a plus size person, I think it's that much harder to shop at places like that because your options are more and more limited.
Absolutely. I
So
remember, oh, sorry. Um, During Coachella when Revolve puts on their whole
oh
shib,
yeah, yeah.
and I just did some research. I'm like, okay, Revolve has something around 8,000 pieces of clothing for sale.
Mm.
Of pieces of clothing that came in like a size 14 or above, about 800.
Oh, out
Yet
of
they're
8,000.
out of 8,000. Like they're
Out of 8,000.
sponsoring, it was some insane number, yet they're sponsoring all of this stuff and being inclusive and bringing on girls that can literally only fit in accessories, which is fine, but it matters.
It does.
It
Why does
matters.
it matter to you?
It's just feels like a capitalist scheme, when they bring on girls to fit the social media aspect to look good for voting power, yet their site does not reflect the girls that they're inviting. Something's wrong because we
Yeah.
want to shop too. We want to feel included. We want to, when every article is about Revolve's top 10 items and I can't buy one, it does feel like, oh, maybe there's something wrong with me. And I know there's not,
But
but
it gives you that complex. It gives you
yes,
that complex because you're being fed this narrative that like this is the ideal, this is the market, this is who we're looking for, this is who's going to
yes.
look cool, or this is who we're choosing to cater to, and you're like, tiny meatballs are excluded from this, I guess.
Yes,
And you sit there and you're like, what do I do with that information? And to make it a capitalist thing is 100% right. I have noticed that too. I'm like, what is this messaging that we're putting out? Like, we're literally telling people by excluding them in that way, by not offering what they can shop with, we're literally telling them that according to capitalist standards, which also therefore is American standards, you're not included. And
yep.
it's like, how do people not see this? So, like, it's refreshing to hear somebody that also gets it because I've had the
Not
same thought
alone.
for so long. I'm like, oh,
Just sitting here stewing.
like, you ever see that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode where like Charlie's going Pepe Sylvia and like connecting all the dots all over the board? He's like, this article proves it and this article proves it, but then we have
Yeah.
this twisted turn. And I'm like, I'm telling other people this and looking like freaking Charlie. And I'm like, I've been seeing it the
We're
whole
not
time.
crazy. We're
No,
not crazy. It's a real
no,
struggle
it
going
really
on.
is. They don't, but other mid-sized baddies, I think, definitely do. And I think that's why there is a wonderful community for mid-sized girls on Instagram, or at least I've had a good experience with it. And has that been your experience too?
Absolutely. I found some wonderful Instagram friends, some mid-sized gals who provide me with daily inspiration and help me on my bad body image days.
Mhm.
It's important to have a group of people that uplift you and think about, you know, think positively in the same mindset as you. I mean, not everyone, not just like a little bubble of people. But
Right. But somebody that can uplift and maybe even motivate. And that doesn't have to be, that doesn't always have to be somebody with the exact same ideals. I mean, it's comforting when you find that, but there's no rule that says like that's what you have to like somebody or to get along with somebody. Like,
especially on the
just,
internet.
yeah, especially on the internet, because anybody can be anything on the internet. You just don't know. But it is refreshing when you see someone that you think we cross paths in real life, we might actually get along.
For sure.
That's that would be pretty cool. You
Yeah.
talk a little bit about curvy confidence on your page as well. What does that mean to you?
Means feeling good in myself because I know that I am worthy in my body. I know that my body does so many important things, and looking good as society deems it is not an important job of it. It's not
Facts.
required of me. And as long as I feel good, I think that that is more what matters.
Yeah. It's important to, I think, show others that we're feeling that way too, so that they can see somebody that's, not just, well, what I mean is it's inspiring in that when you watch somebody else do that, you're like, oh, okay, well, if the rest of the world or the regular mainstream market isn't going to include me or sell to me, somebody else out there is at least championing
Yes.
something that I resonate with, even if it's not, your typical market, if it's not Target, if it's not whatever mainstream, somebody out there somewhere is doing it, and we always appreciate that. We always need to see that. That in itself, I think, is motivating.
I wish I had seen as a little kid more people that look like me instead of
Facts.
the 90s models and the early
Yeah.
2000s low rise jean models. Like I really could have used more representation.
Facts. I think that's why JLo became a big deal right away, because when she first did her clothing line, it was like, oh my God, somebody created jeans for people with hips and a ass. It was
Yes.
like, what? Like that was mind blowing in 2001 or whatever it was. And now it's like almost essential to carry that in your brand. But which I'm glad it should
Yeah,
have been from the very beginning. Can
exactly.
I imagine that you and I are pretty close in age. So when I was looking, at women growing up, I was looking at like your Paris Hiltons, your Pam Andersons, your Nicole Richies, the Olsen twins, people like that, and they're all like these real thin, tiny, blonde,
Mhm.
not little
Absolutely.
Italian American meatballs from the East Coast that had a little bit of, that had hips and an ass. And I was like, well, where does that
Yes.
leave me? Oh, and they also don't look like Lydia Dietz on a good day. Like it just, I, like there was no market. They're like
Yes.
you would find somebody that looked like me in horror movies, not like on Tiger Beat.
Horrible.
Like
But
that's what you would find.
it was all about a specific cookie
Yeah,
cutter. It's all that mattered. It was a
right.
very, I think, detrimental to every little girl during that time. All of
Kind
us.
of.
I
And
think it was hard on us.
definitely. And I'm glad we're growing out of that now. Let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about your collage art, because I know that you love to make it. And every time I look at it, I think Smashing Pumpkins album cover, this could have been a grunge moment from like the early 90s. Like when I looked at the page, I was like, wow, there's some stuff here. So how did you get into that?
Thank you so much, first of all. I had been collecting fashion magazines for about like 6 years, and they were just taking up so much space in my bedroom that one day I was like, I'm going to make a vision board. And then
Fun.
I just kind of made a collage instead. And then it was like, well, that was kind of cool. Like, I'll just cut the rest of these up. And I've been doing it ever since.
Is
And I
art fun? Is art a form of therapy for you? Creating like that, is that a form of therapy?
yes. And it's like a free form of therapy, which is even more important because therapy is super inaccessible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I can just kind of sit down and tune everything out, especially cutting out super detailed pieces. It takes so much
Mm,
focus that I can't think about anything else. So it's a great escape for me.
totally. So is your perfect day just like locking yourself in your room, putting some music on, and then just putting a collage together or a vision board together, maybe with some tea on the side or something?
Yes, that sounds like the perfect day. That I might do that tomorrow, actually.
You- I would do that any day too. That does sound like fun. And I mean, I love that you can get as creative as you want. I think that's one of the best parts about just the concept of design in general. You do carry design, I think, or you do care about design. I think
Yeah.
you studied design. Is that true too? Or a
I
little
took
bit?
some like graphic design courses
Okay.
after college, but I also work in like the clothing industry, like a
Mm.
manufacturing side. So I have that kind of aspect, but yeah, definitely a creative mind. I
I,
like that stuff.
I know. At what point did you realize that you were a creative person? Do you remember realizing that?
It was really late in life. It was probably honestly when I made a collage and my mom's like, "Oh, this is really good. Like I might frame this and put it up in the house." I'm like, all of my art that I've ever given you is in a drawer in the pantry. Like this is I might have something here.
It's listen, it is next to that kindergarten turkey, and now we want to put this. We it's
Still
like
sitting there.
it's still in there, like oh yeah, stuffed in there with the thousands of other art projects that you did from like kindergarten to 12th
Yeah,
grade or whatever it was. But that hand turkey
exactly.
is there with the little like tracing it and
It
coloring
is.
it in. Oh my lord! But so your mom sounds like she's been a pretty important person when it comes to just encouraging you with your art
Absolutely.
and your flair for
Yes.
creativity. Was she a creative person too?
She has always been creative. She sewed her own clothes in high school and growing up,
Cool.
and she would always sew mine and my sister's Halloween costumes every year for our like entire childhood. So she's creative in that aspect, and it definitely comes out. She's very into home decor, so that's like
Mm.
her outlet as well. It's putting together a flawless room.
What do you think are some of the best parts of design and putting things together?
I think it's just a great escape and a great expression of who you are. It kind of lets people know your interests, a little bit of your background without having to speak to you. They can just look at something you create.
Yeah,
Okay. Like that's kind of who she is.
it really is. Like in a weird way, I think whenever I like if I style an outfit or if I post something I created like on Instagram or whatever, or a YouTube video that I edited a particular way or whatever, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of your way of getting to know me because I feel like a freaking weirdo and I feel like nobody else gets it. But sometimes if they see like a visual manifestation, they might get it. And then they might be like, oh, you're this is what we're going for. This is the vibe. Okay, I think we might actually get along here.
Yes. You just have to connect to the right people.
That's true. Have you done that with your Instagram page? I feel like maybe you probably have found your tribe, so to speak, and you've
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah. I think we're still growing, hopefully. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I've found some really solid friends. I'd like to call them friends. Just
Aw,
yeah, a good tribe of gals.
I know, I do. Like there's times where I'm sitting at work and I'm like, can I just talk to my friends instead? And I
Yep.
don't mean like my real life friends. I mean like, can I just BS on Instagram for half an hour and like be left alone? Just
Exactly.
what's harder, and it's harder for me too because my very close like best friends, they really don't live in Minnesota. I'm still kind of sort of new to Minnesota. It's been excuse me, only 6 years.
Yeah.
So everybody else is like either in Illinois or back in Pittsburgh. And I'm like, oh, my God. And then I'm like, oh, all right. So when I miss them, I can text them, which is great. But like sometimes Instagram's fun for that too, when you're like want to be a little bit more social, pun intended.
Yeah. Because it's hard to make friends as an adult. It's hard to like get
It
out there and
is.
meet people. Like, what do you can you hang out at the mall like we did as teenagers? And like, no, you can't
Yeah.
just look around the mall as an adult and wait to make friends.
I was just telling my dad that this morning. Like we were on the phone and he was like, "Man, I think you and your brother might be the last generation of kids that got to like play in the street,
Yes.
not worry about it, and like did that didn't have like helicopter parents like that they're well, in some respects that they have to be today, because
Yeah.
things are different than they were even 20, 30 years ago. It's it's
For
a
sure.
different world. They are scarier. So I kind of understand it, but then at the same time, I'm like, man, they're really missing out. Like, I used to love just being out in the woods, getting dirty, and like, oh, okay, street lights are on. I guess that means it's dinner time, or mom's gonna scream for me if I don't come back. Like,
Exactly. No, kids just don't have that. I was always out
no.
there. My sister loved to make us play real life Oregon Trail constantly.
Fun.
It
Oh
was,
my God. Wait, if you were doing that in Seattle, you were kind of almost near the real thing.
oh yeah, it was very effective. She was a stickler for authenticity.
You had to have the cholera. You had to turn around and shoot the buffalo because that would feed you through the winter. You had to do it.
Dysentery. Dysentery.
Dysentery. Charity, you have dysentery now. Faith, you have broken your ankle.
You must be put down.
You, I know they treat people like animals. Like I would not survive if I
No,
was
I'm
on the
not part
Oregon
of that.
Trail. I think
Mm-mm.
the first little hunger pang I got, like I wouldn't make it past Chimney Rock or whatever that is. Like that
I'm
first
out.
like big chop.
Let me get that cow.
Like
We're out
I
of
need
here.
to I need to shoot a buffalo. Oh, that deer, man. That's only a 60-pound deer. That's not gonna get us through winter. I'm like, why
Hold
am I
on.
assessing this as
Dinner.
a fifth grader? I'm like, why?
It's
Like,
heavy. It's a lot of trauma on our hearts.
because we had to keep our like wagon party going, and we were like, why am I thinking about how much food one animal is going to supply for an entire winter? I'm 10. I'm
We're very
10.
practical minded, though, aren't we?
We are.
These
Today
days.
we are.
What do they know?
We are.
Could they survive a winter? No,
Nope. Do we know how many deer it takes to shoot to last through a winter? Yes.
probably.
Maybe in a game. I would never do it in real life though. That would terrify me. That
That's
would
too
terrify me. I don't think I could watch. I couldn't watch that happen. You know, if you know what I
no
mean. I'm like, I don't. I wouldn't have the heart to do it. I couldn't do it. But if you're doing it to survive, maybe you get over that real quick. I
respect for
couldn't
that.
do it.
I
Right.
cry when I step on my dog's toes. It's like,
Yes.
I'm
I do.
uncomfortable.
I know. I apologize to my cat when I trip over her when she's doing the figure eights between my legs because she's hungry or whatever. Because it just happens to be the time of day she gets fed, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
I'm an idiot. You hate me.
And then she's over it within 10 seconds, and she's like silently judging me from the other side of the room, and she's like, whatever. I know
That's what
they don't
best.
care.
No.
Well, so do you think that living in Seattle had an impact on your creative output or any of the finished pieces of work that you have shown the world?
I believe so. Yeah. It's such a creative city and there's like
Mm,
just incredible street art everywhere. I
yeah,
used to take pictures and get them developed for my phone every month. It was like an app that would send you those. So I've cut a lot of street art up and used that in my collages. So that's like direct inspiration. But
cool.
yeah, just such a creative visual city has definitely had an impact.
Awesome. Maybe even the weather for like a little bit of a more grungy vibe. I've always, I mean, I didn't grow up in it, but I've always appreciated that like part of rock and metal music. I'm like, so I've
Yeah.
been to Seattle a couple times and I freaking love it. If it wasn't so damn expensive, I would live there.
It's
Fact.
so crazy. It's
It
wild. It's hard.
it really is. Like we need to keep that in check somehow. And just it's insane. But it's an interesting place. It's a beautiful place. I love it so much. And it's so cool that it's still a hub for creativity. So I like
Yeah,
hearing that.
I'm happy to see it. It's everywhere you go. There's more art to see and creatives out playing music or
Yeah.
everywhere. It's yeah, it's
Cool.
vibrant.
Well, what is next for you? What can we look forward to coming from you?
Ooh, I just moved houses like 3 weeks ago. So I'm just getting
Oh,
settled, trying to get
yeah.
back into the groove of shooting outfits and being more consistent with that. Trying to make more style reels, like transitional weather
Yeah.
style, Pinterest, like model off duty recreations and all that. So, and I started a blog last year and have like 5 posts. So I'm trying to get back into that as well.
Okay. Shout out the blog. Where can we find the blog? What's the name, the title?
The larsenedit.com.
Okay.
Yes.
Fun. Well,
Yeah.
So excited to see all of it. I will continue to follow, and we're going to get some other people to hit follow as well. Thank you
Oh,
so much for hanging out with me, Gigi. I
thanks
enjoyed
for
this.
having me. It was so wonderful.